Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Welcome to another episode of Empowered to Live. I'm your host, Andrea Rose Butler of Becoming Woman's Network, and this is the podcast where faith meets purpose and purpose fuels freedom. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. This is going to be kind of a reflection episode of kind of looking back at what we did last year and where we are going for 2026. I am so excited that you are here with me on this evening. And again, welcome to 2026. You made it, you survived, and hopefully you thrived in 2025. If you felt that you didn't, this is a new day, a new year, and a new season, and new opportunity. We are moving forward. We are not looking back. We're not looking back with regret. We're going to take the lessons that we learned from last year, and we're going to move forward into 2026 with all of that. We're going to press forward. That's the word we got last night. I was at a friend of mine on their church's New Year's Eve service, and that was the message. Move forward. We're going to press. No distractions, no detours, no sideshows. We're not going to do any of those things in 2026. We're going to move forward, and so we're going to have some movement this year. And I'm so glad that you are along with me for the journey, for the ride that we're going to take this year. There's going to be growth, and so I'm so excited. I've been saying that all of December. I'm just so excited about what God's going to do in 2026, not only in my life, but in yours as well. And I'm just excited about that. I'm so, I don't know why, but I've just had this excitement about 2026. And I'm believing God for a great year this year. And so again, I want to welcome you. For those who have not followed me and not watched before, welcome to Empower to Live. For those that you have been following with me, have been rolling for the past 18, going into 19 months now. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you that we are here as we close out the old year and we enter the new one. I just want to take this opportunity. Like I said, this is more, we're going to be reflecting on where we were on the journey that we took together last year and where we are. And we're gonna focus in on that. We're not going to rush. We're not going to rush what's coming. We're moving forward, but we're moving forward with intention into this year. So this year, and as I said, if you saw, I was on the live with Pat Dyer last week on her podcast that she has, and we're talking about we don't do resolutions. We set goals and we achieve them. I'm a life purpose coach, so we're about purpose, and purpose is about intention, not just about, oh, I'm going to change this. And my daughter and I were talking this morning, and she was saying, today gyms are the busiest they will be at any time through the year because everyone makes these resolutions. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do this. And we resolve to do that. But, within the first less than 30 days, more than 50% of people fall off their resolution within the first 30 days. So we're not about resolutions, we're about intention, we're about purpose, and we're about walking out that purpose. And so we're going to um, give thanks for the journey of where we have been. Maybe that was you. Maybe you made a resolution last year and you didn't stick with it and you kind of fell off the bandwagon. That's okay. This is a new year, a new time. And like I said, this year is about movement, it's about intention, and it's about getting it done, about walking in purpose, the reason that we are called for. And so we're going to be setting some goals. And one of the things that we talked about last week on that podcast was she and I are collaborating on a vision party on January the 13th. It's free, and I'll share the link um, with you guys, how you want to sign up for that. And so it's a free 90 minutes of intention of walking through, getting some goals down on paper, and then actually fulfilling your dreams and your goals in 2026. So all the things that you wish I had done or any of those things, this is your year to get it done. We're going to get her done. So let's want to reflect on today. We're going to give thanks. We're going to honor the journey that we have walked together this year. And so, what are some of the things that we talked about in this past year? We've had some honest conversation, the kinds that stretches us, the kind that heals us, and the kind that reminds us that growth isn't always loud, but it's always meaningful. And so before we go further, I want to, we always have that anchor scripture that we have for the podcast. And today we're talking about God's faithfulness. And it says, because of the Lord's great love, that we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. And so that's our reminder that God's faithfulness is new, that he is doing new things in this new year for you. And so we're going to anchor in and we're going to hold on to God's faithfulness, that every day with his new mercies, he gives us new opportunities for growth, new opportunities to move forward, new opportunities to keep walking. Maybe we stopped along the way, and now I'm coming to tell you, come on, let's join the race and let's keep going, let's keep pushing. We're going to move forward because God is faithful. And so, what are some of the things we talked about this past year? We talked about your identity. Who are we when we're not performing? Who are we when we strip away the roles, the masks, and the expectations that we have? We've talked about spiritual warfare, understanding that the battle isn't with people or circumstances, but it was in unseen places of the mind and the heart, and how God has already equipped us with everything that we need. That's the anchor scripture for Empowered to Live, that God has given us everything we need to live this life and to live it godly. And so he's already empowered us with everything we need to stand firm. We've talked about the lies that we believe. And maybe you're still holding on to some of those lies as we come into this new year. And we're gonna lay those lies aside. We took them out, and we shone the light of truth on the lies that we believe, those whispers that tell us that we're not good enough, we're too broken, we're too late, we're too old, we're too young, we've made mistakes. All of those things may be true, but they're not your destiny. And so we're not going to hold on to those things. We're not going to continue to believe the lies that he tells us. And so we've learned to confront them. And I said, we shine the light of God's truth on who he says that you are in him. And if you want to take a look at those, you can go to YouTube and check out the podcast series there. They're all out there. And so, if you want to look back and refresh your memory on some of the things that we talked about, we broke up with burnout. And that was a big one because, we think that exhaustion is a badge of honor, and it's not. God didn't call us for to be exhausted. He said, come, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, because my yoke is easy, my burden is light. But we take on so many burdens, so many things that don't belong to us, and we carry it around. And we think it's okay for us to wear these things, and we burn ourselves out, and we had a breakup. We sung our breakup song with burnout, and that busyness is not always fruitfulness. So just because you're moving doesn't mean that you are accomplishing anything. And this is why we talk about focus, intention. How can we become focused and intent on the things that we are needing to do? We've got so many things that we live outside of our margins, and we become exhausted. And I was speaking to myself, and for a lot of time, a lot of years, that was me living all outside of the margins, or even onto the next pages, and I didn't say page, I mean pages of stuff. Just so my hands in so many different things that I was like physically, emotionally, spiritually tired. And I was like, "Oh, this is so good. You're so busy, doing the Lord's work," and ready to collapse. And that's just not what God wants for us. And so we're gonna let those things go. We talked about, how do we fulfill our purpose, and then as we wrapped up the year, we learned about gratitude, and that was a big one. So gratitude, and it was not just a feeling, but it's a spiritual discipline for us to walk in gratitude, to be grateful, how to have gratitude in good seasons and bad seasons, in those difficult days that we have. And I know a lot of you may have experienced some hard times in 2025. There was loss. My family suffered a lot of, we had some loss. Our family in Jamaica went through hurricanes, and they're still dealing with all of those things that happen, loss of loved ones, friends, and all these different things that happened last year. And it was a hard year. I dealt with my own personal sickness and stuff, going on for a while. Things with my mom, just all kinds of things, that happened. But God said, in every situation, be thankful. And so I held on to that, ground myself in that, in every situation. So the good, the bad, the ugly, the uncomfortable, to be grateful and to give thanks in all of those seasons and all of those places. And so gratitude grounds us, it changes our perspectives, and it prepares us for what's next. So if I'm honest, this year reminded me, and maybe reminded you too, that growth is really linear. We don't grow like this. We grow like this. We're all over the place when we're growing. It's not just, we're just going straight. No, it's the zigzags, and it's the turns and the curves and all of these different things. And sometimes the growth, it's steep, and we're like, I can't reach the next step. And I was like, stretch your hand up. I've got you. And so in those moments, we recognize that that there is that growth sometimes can be painful. When we do it with gratitude, it softens the burden of the growth. Doesn't lessen the pain, but it softens it, and it makes it bearable and tolerable, so that we can endure and move forward in that. And so we had moments of clarity. And clarity is so important for us when we're journeying, that we have clarity as to where we're going. And then when we set our GPS, we know we have a destination. And this is why we need to know our purpose and how to get there. Because then how do we set that, our GPS? How do we work towards it? How do we know we're on the right path if we don't have clarity? So we need to know where we're going. And we've talked about that over this past year. We need that clarity of thought of where am I going? And then why do I need to get there? And what's my why behind why I want to go to this particular destination. And so when we talked about that, and the difficulties that sometimes that we experience when we're trying to get to our next. There are, again, there are distractions, there are disappointments, there are all of those things. But when we are rooted in why, we know that we will arrive at where we're going. So in those confusions, we have moments of strength. Sometimes we are just getting through the day, and that's okay. You survived the day, and that's a win. And you made it. You made it through the day. We made it through the year. We made it through the moment. We got to this morning, and we woke up. And it was a new year, it was a new day, and the new mercies were there meeting us and waiting for us in this day. And so we got through it. And this reminder that God is present in every season of our life. He is there. So even when we don't have the answers, even when we're frustrated, even when healing is taking longer than we expected. You guys know I've had this cane now for all, well, I needed a cane. I wasn't using the cane. And then when I fell, not once, but twice, and I realized, oh, you need to have this until, one, the doctors finally figure out what's going on. And is this something that, is going to take a miracle to heal from? And we have those moments when I'm like, okay, God, what are we doing? You're showing me all these things and I'm growing here, but then I've got this thing now it's slowing me down. I'm used to walking, I'm used to moving and doing all this other stuff, but now I can't move like like I used to. And I'm like, God, but you've given me this destination that you want me to go to, but I'm hindered now by, there's a limiting disability that I have, but I'm still moving. And that's okay. And I'm like, God, I'm gonna keep moving until you show yourself up and you show that healing there. And that's important. We keep moving no matter what happens, keep moving, keep pushing, keep driving, keep moving forward. That's what's important. And so when progress is slow, so what do we learn this year? What did you and I learn together this year? And one of those things is that healing is holy work, whether it's physical healing, whether it's emotional healing, whether it's mental healing, because some of us, whether we've been so tired and we need to be healed from that, we recognize that rest is obedience and not a weakness. You know, I was guilty of that. If I was just like, no, you should be moving. Why are you resting? No, you got stuff to do. And the scripture can come back to my, he said, rest, rest. Jesus rested. Why do you think you don't need to rest? Why do you think you're greater than Jesus? So why do you think that? And so I had to put that on. And so I'm learning to slow down and to rest and to reflect and to recognize that, again, rest is obedience, is not weakness. Gratitude shifts our perspective. And when we focus in on only on the negative, we miss out on all the things that surround us. And so when we're gratitude, it causes us to look up, and it changes our perspective on things. Purpose unfold one faithful step at a time. I know my favorite saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begin with that first step. So we take that first faithful step. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. It's like you get in the car and you're like, okay, we're driving. I'm heading to, I heard Bugs Bunny in my head, and we're on our way to Albuquerque. And so to get there, you got to get in the car. So that's that first step. You have to leave your comfort of your home, get into the car, start the car up, back out of your driveway or your parking space or whatever, get on the road. And so all of these are steps in order for us to go on that journey of purpose. It's one faithful step at a time. Get dressed, get the keys, leave out your house, get in the car, start the car. All of these are steps that we take to lead us into that place of purpose. And I'm talking a lot about purpose again in 2026, because I think it's so important for us to recognize that we are created for a purpose. We are not here by accident. And so I want you to, if nothing else that you hear from me over, the past year and into the new year, is that you were created for purpose, not just to get up, go to work, just the whole there is more to life, and there's more that God has for you. And so if you're in that place where you're feeling like this can't be all that I do, you know, then this is, again, I talk about that workshop that's coming up, that we're doing on January 13th. That may be the place for you to start to get into that place of discovering, what purpose is all about and how do you get there one faithful step at a time. And I remind you that you are not behind, you're becoming. It's a Becoming Women's Network. So you are becoming. So you're not behind. You are becoming who God created you to be. So even if you were stuck, you were caught up in a detour, all of those things God has called you to become. We are becoming new creations each and every day. And we are becoming who we were created to be, one day at a time, one faithful step at a time. And so we are important that you recognize that you're not behind, no matter what, who has left you in the race. You are still becoming. You're still on that journey towards purpose. And the biggest lesson is all is that you don't have to have it all figured out to start walking in purpose. You don't have to have all the things written out and have the steps and it's all mapped out and you've got, all these, those type A personalities that needs to know all the details. You don't need to know all the details. All you need to do is take that first faithful step. And the God has already globally positioned you to walk it out. So he knows where you're going. He knows the steps that you have. He's laid out your path already. He just wants you to trust him as you walk it out. And it doesn't you're learning lessons along the way. And so you don't have to have it figured out. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not about performance. It's about purpose. And purpose is not a performative thing. Purpose is who you are and who you were created to be. And that's it. That's what I want you to take away from that. That it's for you. So walking in purpose, not performance. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to start doing it. I've shared many times about this podcast and all the things and missteps and all the things that I've done along the way. And as I'm learning and as this thing is growing, I had a friend, she was putting stuff up on the screen the other day for her podcast, and I was like, we was on the same. I was like, how'd you do that? I said, ooh, I need to learn how to do that. So, ooh, you may see that in coming days, or in the new year, that'll be popping stuff up on the screen as I learn and grow. Again, faithful step in learning. I figured out StreamYard. I'm learning how to do that. Now we started, we were only on Facebook Live, and I was doing my thing. I didn't have structure, it was nothing. It was just like I was thinking on the fly, what I was gonna do, what I was gonna talk about, and I was just winging it. And then we started doing, you saw planning and planning stuff out, what episodes we're gonna do, and even sometimes that changed. And then we went from Facebook Live to StreamYard, and StreamYard got me on LinkedIn and YouTube and still on Facebook and so on. We began to grow and start to develop and things start happening and faithful step moving towards purpose. It was shaky in the beginning, but God is growing. He's growing. He's working it out, and he's still working it out, and he's going to work it out for you too. So as we wrap up this reflection of 2025, I want to invite you to reflect with me. You can journal this, you can pray about it, or you can just simply sit quietly. And so, where did you see God stretch you in this past year? What were some areas that you were stretched? You're thinking, God, I can't do this. It's too much. And he was stretching and stretching and stretching. And my biggest thing is being in front of this camera. This has been a big stretch for me. I'm behind the scenes girl doing this. And like, I don't know who was watching. I don't know if anybody is, but we're seeing the audience beginning to grow. But this, just talking and stretch for me was one of those things to, that word that I got to get from behind, get from behind the screen and come forward. And here we are. That was in 2024. And it still took me a few months before I did that. And God has continued to stretch me in various areas. I'm back in school. I'm doing a dual degree. I'm still trying to work on doing this podcast, trying to build a coaching business, trying to do some workshops and different things that are coming up, and trying to stay in purpose and what it is. We have our foundation is growing, and we're doing some things here in Mexico, stretching. God has been stretching me. How did your faith grow? It's like, what did you survive that you thought that you wouldn't survive in 2025, that you are here right now, today, in the first day of this new year, that you're like, I'm not gonna make it, but here you are. How did your faith grow through that? Even in subtle ways, how did you see your faith growing through the difficulties or through the stretching that you went through? What are you grateful for as you close out this? We've closed out 2025, and we're starting a new page, a new chapter in our book. It's a continual journey, so it's a new page. That chapter is over. We're starting a new chapter now that God is writing in the story of our life. What's something that you're grateful for that you learned in 2025 that you're going to take into 2026, and that you're so grateful that you learned it? You're so grateful that you survived it. You're so grateful that God stretched you. So what are some of those things that build you up, that's going to help you write this new chapter of 2026? And so, don't rush it. Think about it. Go back and listen to this. What are some of those things that you brought you through? And as we look ahead, so we're looking ahead with purpose. Now we're looking forward with purpose. You don't have to rush. You don't have to reinvent yourself. Be your authentic self. And that's something that I'm learning too, about authenticity, to be who you are, you know, not about you. We talk about that identity. And that really hit hard for me, dealing with, who am I, you know, when I don't have to show up, who is the true me? Who is true Andrea? What does she look like? And how do we build on that to get to where we are, as she walks in purpose, as I walk in purpose, as you walk in purpose? So again, it's not about reinventing yourself, but it's allowing God to open your eyes so that you can see who you truly are. I don't know, we're talking about this. I shared, I think it was in the last podcast, that we're doing a new series, not a, I'm not a new series, but a new segment. And I said I didn't know how it was going to work out, and how I was going to do it, whether it was going to be a monthly, it was going to be quarterly. And as I was sitting here thinking about it and praying about this, it's going to be, every month that there's a fifth Thursday. That fifth Thursday is going to be our Visionary Voice segment. And so I was talking to her, and I said, that first one we were talking about, on January 29th on Visionary Voices, you know, living beyond fear and walking in purpose. And I've got three wonderful, amazing women that are going to come and share their story and encourage you. And so we created this Visionary Voice segment that's, again, every month that there's a fifth Thursday. That's when we're going to have it. So I'm looking for guests. So if you're interested in being one of the Visionary Voices that speak, you can message me and let me know that's something that you want to do. We can talk about it and see how you would fit into our segment, if at all possible. And it's about growth. It's about moving forward. And so it's not an overnight thing. I started this podcast June 4th of 2024, as I was going through the transitioning from the United States to Mexico, all kinds of things, even my job, I was still working, there was so many things that was going on. And so there was a lot of transition that took place to get us to the place that we're in right now. So you don't have to, so it wasn't about reinventing, but it was revealing, who I am, and the voice and the authority that I have. Pat, she was boosting me up on her show last week, and she was like, if you want to know how to walk in purpose, she's your lady. This is the one right here. And I was like, oh, and somebody recognized that I was willing to share that, and I was just like, wow, She listens to the podcast, and so as a friend of the podcast, to really, begin to speak life into me. And so it wasn't about reinvention. It was about how I already was, but I hadn't been walking it out and demonstrating that authority that I had to speak life and purpose into others. And so we are at this space now where we are. So we can, so we don't have to carry what God is asking us to release. That's another thing that I want you to focus on and think about in this year. And that the same God that walked with you through last year is the same God that will walk with you in this year. He's already waiting for you in 2026. He was here before the clock struck midnight this last night or this morning, however you want to look at it. He was already there. And I was thinking about this as far as like time zones. I was with my friends last night and it was midnight where they were, but it was only 11 o'clock here. And so they were already into the new year, but I hadn't gotten there yet. But I was celebrating with them because they had reached their new year. And I wasn't quite into my new year yet, but we were able to celebrate together. We met together in their year. While I was still in 2025, they were already in 2026, and they were waiting for me to get caught up to them. And this is how God is. God was like them, and it's like the time differences. God was already there. Looks like they were already in 26, and I wasn't there yet. This is how God is. He's already in. He's already in 2026. He's already in December 31st of 2026, and he's just waiting for you to walk through with him, knowing that he's already there. He's already laid the path out for you. The road has already been set. He just wants you to stay connected and follow the trail that he's left for you. And so we talked about, we'll continue this journey together of walking in purpose, of walking through healing, of learning how to live empowered. And so I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you for trusting me in this space. Those of you who are here with me every Thursday evening, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for showing up for yourself and your faith. So whether this year that passed felt victorious or exhausting or a little of both, I want you to hear this, that you are still called, you are still chosen, you are still becoming. And I just want to encourage you. That's why I'm here. That's my purpose for being here, to empower you to live the life that God has called you to live. And so I want to thank you for being a part of the Empowered to Live community. Stay tuned for what God is getting ready to do. And again, I am so excited for your future. And I look forward to next week as we roll into this new year, this new season. Again, beginning with walking with purpose. And so we're going to talk about walking in purpose again in January. Look out for the registration for the workshop. Again, it's free workshop, January 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be on Zoom until we have a registration link so we know how to prepare, and I will share that with you. If you're not signed up for my newsletter, I want to encourage you to do that, to sign up for our newsletter called Purpose in Motion, that you will, go out and show up and see that. So it comes out every Friday afternoon or Friday morning. So when you wake up, it's there in your inbox. It's called Purpose in Motion. We've been doing this now since April, I believe. And so, we can go to the website and sign up for our weekly newsletter. God is doing some amazing things. He will be hosting also a writer's workshop starting at the end of this month. It's going to be a 4-week workshop that we'll do. So it'll be in person and Zoom. So if you ever thought about writing a book or you're interested in writing a book, so what we're going to be doing is going to be a series of short stories over the 4-week period. And then at the end, I'm going to put those together in an anthology. And so you will be a published author at the end. So more to come on that. So be watching out for that information. We'll put information in the newsletter as well. Again, Purpose in Motion. So keep that in mind. You can just go to the website and you can sign up for that. And that's you can also catch us on YouTube and all the places, LinkedIn, Facebook, of course, at the Becoming Woman's Network. Again, I appreciate all of you being here. Happy New Year again. You know, God is already here. He's waiting for you, and He has an amazing and awesome plan for you for this year. So be blessed. Enjoy the rest of your evening and live empowered and stay empowered. Good night.